snack for the road. Oh, I just came from a fancy party. Biltong. Or tastes kind of like biltong. But it's not made of meat. It's made out of mushrooms. So it still tastes pretty good. 3 billboards. There's this woman named Mildred Hayes. She puts up these 3 billboards on this basically deserted road, and the point is to shame the police over this unsolved murder of her daughter. Her daughter's been murdered gruesomely. That's horrible. And the police can't solve it, so she doesn't know what else to do, and she puts up these billboards.
Hey, fuckhead!
What?
Don't say what, Dixon, when she comes in calling you a fuckhead.
So it's a personal / political drama, I guess, but with a little bit more emphasis on the personal stuff. Before I get into the rest of this, I think it's worth mentioning that most of the conversation is going to be in the spoilers section. But I'm going to say as much as I can before we get there. My view on this movie is that it's a little bit hit and miss. I don't want to be one of those people who just nitpicks movies for the sake of nitpicking, but I'm going to nitpick this movie. And it's because I think overall the ideas in the movie, the ideas at play are good ideas. It fails because of all these little things. One at a time, it like chips away at this film being good. So it's not a shit movie. There's a lot of things that it just didn't work. I don't think it's really political in the way that you expect going into it. You kind of expect it to be little guy versus the system kind of movie, you know? We're bringing down the authority kind of movie. And it really wasn't that. And it's very clearly a message movie. And that's why I'm judging it so harshly, is that it seems to be a message movie, a movie that there's a very clear purpose to this movie, and it kind of fails at that purpose. Coming out of it, I really thought I'd had a good time. I thought it was a really good movie. I enjoyed myself. The experience is pretty good. It's pretty entertaining. It's just that a lot of the emotional stuff kind of clashed. The pacing was a little bit odd, but overall, it wasn't too bad. The bad stuff wasn't so bad that I hated the movie. I still came out feeling like that was a worthwhile movie to go watch. There were a lot of good scenes, a lot of good characters, and a lot of good acting, and a lot to make this a worthwhile movie experience. Contrasted with a lot of weak shit. You know, the beginning is a lot of meandering. The main culprit is the execution. I'll get into this a little bit more in the spoiler section, but I really think it's the directing. Oh, my knees. Oh, jeez. Too many different moving parts. Each moving part just kind of takes away from all the others. And so each one of those things is a good character. It's a good idea. It could have developed really well, but it gets very, very little screen time because there's just so much shit that shouldn't be in there. There's a great scene between Mildred and her ex-husband, and a few strong scenes with the cops and stuff like that. I think overall the film does a pretty good job of making you feel a lot of compassion. Acting, I don't think there were really any weak links in terms of the acting. I don't think this is my favorite Frances McDormand performance. The scene between her and John Hawkes, there was something off about his performance. There's a scene between Frances McDormand, Mildred, and her husband, John Hawkes. And they have this strong confrontation, and all the pieces of the scene are interesting, and they draw you in, and it works out in such an interesting way. But I just couldn't go along with it because that John Hawkes performance was just so weird. I don't know what it is. I don't know, maybe it's just the way he acts, but I just found it strange, and it just threw me right out of the movie. I still don't know what it is exactly that's weird about it. It might just be me. He looked uncomfortable, is the thing. Like, he looked... The thing with Peter Dinklage was pretty great too, but I think it really stole from the main thrust of the movie. Everything was sort of moving in this one direction, and then there's this thing with Peter Dinklage, and it feels like it just belongs in an entirely different movie. It just felt so wrong and out of place. I have some mixed feelings about Sam Rockwell's performance. I know he's a great actor, and he's got all this critical acclaim for this role and all these awards, but I just felt like I'm not 100% sure if it was his decisions or the director's decisions, but I'm inclined to think this is the director's fault. There was just something off about his character, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more in the spoilers section. The big monologue There's that scene where she has this big monologue and she's standing her ground at this pastor. The pastor who's just come in and said, listen, a couple of the people at church have spoken to me. They agree with that the crime should be solved, but they don't agree with the billboards, Mildred. She stands her ground. Kind of felt like, why is that scene in here? I mean, it's thinking about it afterwards, it doesn't make sense that that is in there, because the pastor doesn't come back. The only point of that scene is that Mildred gets a chance to have this big monologue. Woo, monologue. The monologue is just, it's a form of exposition, basically. The only point of the monologue is to give Frances McDormand a chance to show her acting chops, to let you know that most of the town doesn't agree with the billboard. And 3, kind of slot in this philosophical idea that if you're part of a gang, you're liable for their actions, for crimes they commit, even if you knew nothing about those crimes. And she takes that one step further to say, oh, if you're part of the church, you should be liable for the church's crimes. And I think the point of it is that you're supposed to extend that idea then to institutions and maybe even to political alignments. And you're supposed to take that idea further and extrude it into other situations. If police do something bad, then other members of the police should be held liable. It's a weird idea. But the problem is that the scene is not that good. It's just kind of a filler that's supposed to serve those purposes, basic purposes, and not be fantastic writing or a good filmmaking or anything like that. All right. Spoilers from here on out. Spoilers. 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 If you want to skip the spoilers, just go to this time code. I've been just trying to tiptoe around the spoilers the whole time. It seems like this movie is trying to make a kind of a centrist political statement. And I think to that end, it's mostly focused on the plot. The main mechanism it uses to make that point is the plot and generating expectations around certain characters and certain situations, and then subverting those expectations. And you think it's going to go this way, and then it does like something slightly unexpected. And I'm guessing the idea is to challenge your expectations. The fact that you have assumptions about certain characters and certain situations, you just want to assume right away, oh, this is the way it is. I know how it is, just based on the situation. But then you learn a little bit more and you're like, oh, okay, my assumptions were a little bit wrong. And it does that literally over and over and over. It does it so much that it seems like that has to be the point of the movie. Challenge your assumptions. The problem is that it kind of all rests on these characters and these people. Even though the performances were really good, the characters that the performances were built on were just, they're not well-rounded. Just too much. At the start of the film, you take Mildred's side. I think you're meant to take her side initially, but then there's that scene with Chief Willoughby, where she's having that conversation, and you're kind of meant to see his perspective, even though you don't want to, because he's the bad guy. He's the one being mentioned. And everybody wants to assume, oh, he's going to be the bad guy. Let's see who this bad guy is. You end up kind of being nudged to see his side of things a little bit more. And it was actually so strange. When I was watching the film, there's that scene where he confronts her for the first time. They're sitting on the swings. And he's saying, we tried to solve your daughter's murder. There just aren't enough leads. And she says, well, you should try harder. And she says all this ridiculous stuff. And you're like, oh, okay, clearly she doesn't always have the right answers. She would do crazy things if it meant finding her daughter's killers, stuff that would violate human rights and stuff like that. She doesn't care about that stuff. She would do it. At the end of that scene, Chief Willoughby confesses that he has cancer. And the weirdest thing happened in the cinema that I was watching it. Half the cinema started laughing. Please. Oh, please, don't bring up that And it's like, whoa, hold on. Like, I think that says a lot about people. And they just didn't want to hear it. They were like, please, take your shit somewhere else. Meanwhile, he's got a serious issue here. And it makes sense that he would bring it up because he's mentioned in person in the billboard. So it was a very strange thing. I could see that thing in action of people were taking her side and slowly being nudged over to take his perspective. They didn't want to, but I can guarantee you by the time he shot himself, all of those people were taking his perspective as well. So that was a very interesting thing to feel the entire audience shift over From, oh, she's the good guy, he's the bad guy, to go, oh, okay, maybe he's not so bad, and actually try and see his side of things. Even though now you're on the side of the police and trying to take their perspective a little bit, there's that one guy played by Sam Rockwell. Like, the cops, okay, we trying to see their perspective now, but this guy, I don't care. This guy's an asshole. He's the bad one. But then as the movie goes on, you're kind of nudged to even see his perspective. He's sort of the hero near the end of the film. And then we find out about that villain. Okay, now we've taken Sam Rockwell's, but now we found the real bad guy. He's the bad guy. Sam Rockwell overhears him in the bar, and we're like, that's all the evidence we need. We know this is the guy who did it. Because he's describing the murder exactly. And we get the DNA evidence, and it's not him. So he didn't kill her, he was just messed up. Screwed in the brain, there's something wrong with him, clearly. But he's not the killer that we were looking for. So again and again and again, it's trying to be blatantly obvious that this is the truth about this character. And then it's like, I was just kidding. So that's the core of the movie, I think. And the whole crux of it. So it's a really powerful little mechanic that they've got going on. But there's too many flaws in the rest of the film it's supposed to hold up this post, this mechanical, this idea, and there's just too many chinks in the armor, and it just kind of just crumbles. I'm really mixing metaphors here. And one of those, the most obvious one for me, is Sam Rockwell's character. He's the biggest flaw for me. He starts out as this total dick with no redeemable quality. He's just cartoonishly a dick. The way it's portrayed is just so blatant. You can actually feel the director in the way that the performance is going on and the way the camera views him, that it's just totally making fun of this character. Look what a doofus this guy is. Not only is he an asshole, but he's just a doofus. He's an idiot. You shouldn't feel anything for this guy. Where's the intrigue? He's just an asshole and he's stupid. That's all there is. And you could say what you want about his home life, and that's supposed to give him some depth. That's not depth to me. It doesn't provide insight into his character. And he's totally that, right up until the moment where he goes into the police station and he's supposed to read this letter from Chief Willoughby. So he's reading this letter, and by the time he's finished reading this letter, he's literally a different character. He's literally not even the same person anymore. He has all of these character traits that were never there before. Not only is he more compassionate and caring, but suddenly he's not stupid anymore. He's actually smart, and he can solve this murder all of a sudden. And you're just supposed to believe this, even though none of those characteristics were there. I can't buy that. Not only that, but the scene where he's actually reading the letter, it's just totally illogical, because you have Frances McDormand's character across the road, and maybe it could have worked if it wasn't for the sound effect, right? But she throws this Molotov cocktail at the police station. She first checks to see nobody's there. She throws a Molotov cocktail at the police station, and it makes this... And it sounds so loud, you can almost hear it slapping back, echoing all the way down the street, this massive explosion noise. And he's inside the building, he's closer to the explosion than she is, and somehow he doesn't hear it. She throws not just one of these things, she throws like 3 of them. And it's 3 of these massive explosions, and the light of the entire room changes. He's looking with a flashlight. Suddenly the whole room is lit, and he doesn't see it. And there's heat coming in, and he doesn't feel it. He's just so engrossed in this letter that he can't hear what's going on around him. That entire scene and everything it stood for was just... that was the weakest point. You're supposed to change your mind about this character, but instead of having a situation where you get insight and you change your mind about the character, Sam Rockwell from the beginning of the movie is dead, and you have this new character entirely. After she puts up the billboards, this section of the movie before Chief Willoughby kills himself. By the way, that's a very good scene. Oh shit, it's raining. The movie just meanders. It kind of forgets that there's this murder mystery going on and this serious political drama, and it just focuses completely on this character likes this character and all this weird stuff, and that didn't make sense to me. So I'd say it's a good movie, except for the fact that it's a failure. Of course. It sounds so mean. That being said, I walked out feeling pretty satisfied with the movie. Most of the emotional stuff really worked, and I enjoyed that the characters were kind of unlikable. So it was poor execution, but it was good enough to make for an entertaining, interesting movie. And it was good enough to get the idea across, kind of. I think by the end of it, people are going to be having those conversations that the director intended. At the end of the day, I'm going to give it a pass. I'm not going to say it's good, but I'm going to give it a pass. I think most people will enjoy it, but most people won't remember it in a year or two. It's not going to stick. But it's 2 hours well spent. So really mixed feelings on this one. I say one bad thing and one good thing. One bad thing, one good thing. But that's how I feel. It's a lot of mixed feeling. It's a lot of hit and miss.